what to make, how to sell, who will buy, ultimately leading to the most important question: is the money worth the effort? There are other attendant questions, especially one of immutability. How fixed is a business model? So a lot of questions, and to give us an insight into these and other matters around creating an innovative business strategy, the title of our 5th workshop in the series of Startup Caravan is Siddharth Lulla, who's a consultant in business strategy. Siddharth is a finance and marketing major with several years of business building and consulting experience. He has been instrumental in driving business diversification and growth of one of India's leading fashion brands, Nita Lulla, which includes increasing its retail presence, setting up the online platform, a fashion education venture, as well as building other allied services. He also actively works with startups and helps them with mentorship and fundraising support. Along with a keen interest in developing new skills, Siddharth is an avid reader, enjoys management books, and is a certified deep sea diver who enjoys travel, trekking, and any outdoor sport. Our second guest today, who's the moderator for today's session, is Upasana Batra. Upasana is an IIM graduate and is currently working with Accenture Consulting. She ran her own fintech startup prior to this. She is quite active in the fintech ecosystem in India and has often spoken at IITs, IIMs, and industry forums. She supports women entrepreneurs and hopes to empower more women through FICCI. She also serves on BSE's Course Advisory Committee. Right now, Upasana is a financial services consultant. So welcome, Siddharth and Upasana. And Upasana, now I hand the session over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Sangeeta. I'll start with a quick introduction on why we are doing this session today and have Siddharth with us. So as we all know that starting a business is hard work, very hard to make it work, and even harder to scale it. And therefore, laying a solid foundation is as important for a business as anchoring the structure for a skyscraper. A well thought out business model is really important for the success of a startup. Many startup entrepreneurs and small businesses are so busy trying to get started and survive that they spend little time planning. And when they do try to plan, they are often confused on where to start. It is therefore very important for an entrepreneur to clearly lay out different building blocks in a visual representation, which enables them to design and reinvent their business model. And the visualization not only helped them understand what is important, it also helped them understand or communicate to their team what their goals are, and to communicate to their clients why they should do business with you. And to help us plan our business strategy better, today we have Siddharth amongst us. He's going to walk us through the tools and frameworks we have at our disposal for laying out a rock solid foundation for our business. He's going to walk us through a workshop today. And I think over to you, Siddharth. Siddharth, you are on mute.
Yes, I've unmuted. Great. Well, thank you, Upasana. Thank you for the kind words. I was really excited, for the session because I do realize that, apart from, the Flow members, we also have a very large bunch of young college students. And, given the fact that, this current generation of, young entrepreneurs is enterprising, the idea really was that, what do we do in this session which helps them create and plan the business better? And hence, we thought that the best way to really start off is to look at how do you plan your business model. While we have, several ideas and we're buzzing with several ideas, at this age, but we are also in times where, things have really changed. Traditional businesses that worked earlier may not really work in the future. Hence, it is important that, we plan our business in a better way and also look at, the different aspects or elements in the entire value chain of a business to take those into consideration while looking and planning at our entire business model. So we'll jump right into the tool. I'm going to start off with what a business model really is. Take you all through a bit about what the business model canvas is, a very essential tool in terms of planning your business model. Then few case study examples. Then hopefully get some perspective from you all, because I'm really excited to understand from Upasana that some of you all have actually worked and prepared your own business model canvases. So we get time to discuss that. And finally, how does a business model lead to creating a business plan? Yeah, so great. I'm just going to share my screen, take this forward. Is this clear to everyone? Is this clear? Excellent. Great. Great. So starting with the business model canvas. So first of all, the main question is really, what is a business model? And, while a lot of us think that the main idea of, creating a business model is really to make money, money really is the outcome. What we're really doing in terms of, creating a business model is to describe the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. And essentially, when we're saying value, value is really what the customer gets out of our business model and out of our business. Revenues and money is what we get in return. But the main idea of creating a business model really for any organization should be and is to create, deliver, and capture value for a customer. So essentially, a business model is somewhat like this. In terms of, what are the different aspects and elements that go into creating your entire business model, include your product and service, your delivery mechanism, the customers, in terms of revenue, how much is the customer going to pay for your service, some sort of an organizational structure, that you need to, create, to deliver that benefit to the customer and to ensure that your entire machinery, works in a well-oiled manner. I'm going to quickly play a small video, for the benefit of all of you all, to just get an idea of the business model canvas. We jump right into it. Is it on?
Other things that human beings do, like I want to be entertained, or I want to have.
Upasana, can you all see the screen?
Interesting things about thinking about a startup is, how is your company going to be organized? And what we now know is the most efficient way to think about all the pieces, just all the parts, is by a business model. And so the next question is, okay, Steve, you just told me to think about a business model, but what is a business model? What are all the pieces? Well, let's take a look. And a business model is how a company creates value for itself while delivering products or services for its customers. Now, if you think about it, in the old days, we think about how to organize a company around functional organizations. We think, no, a company is about its sales department or its engineering department, and you would draw an org chart. But now we're going to draw a very different diagram. We're going to draw a diagram how to think about all the pieces of a business. And so let's take a look at these 9 boxes. 9 boxes to describe any company from the world's largest to a 2-person startup starting in your parents'.
Video is not visible.
Let's take a look at the first piece called the value proposition. The value proposition answers the question, what are you building and for who? The value proposition says, hey, it's not about your idea or product, it's about solving a problem or a need for a customer. That is, what pain are you solving? What gain are you creating? And more importantly, who are your customers? Now, value proposition is a fancy word for what product or service are you building. This is where you normally would list all your features and here's all the feeds and benefits and whatever, but you're really going to be asking a different question than might have been used to. It's not all about your technology. Your technology is just part of the value proposition. customers really don't care about your technology. The customers are trying to fill a need. By the way, we'll be talking about this through multiple lectures. The difference between a problem and a need is, a problem is, I have an accounting problem. I want to use a word processor. And those types of products solve problems. But there are other things that human beings do, like I want to be entertained, or I want to have a date. Those are some basic hardwired social needs. Or I want to communicate with my friends, like Facebook or Twitter. Those are needs. Needs are different than problems. And by the way, if you could find products that solve needs, your total available market, as you'll see later, is huge compared to I solve specific problems. So the next thing is, who are my customers? Who are they and why would they buy? And as you'll hear a number of times, your customers do not exist to buy, you exist for them. And what you're going to do by getting out of the building is figuring out all their geographic, social characteristics, demographics, such that you actually could draw and put up a picture on your wall of who the archetype is or who the persona is of your customer. And it turns out that in most startups, you might have more than one or two or three types of customer archetypes and personas, but you need to understand them in detail. And there is no possible way you could have anything but a hypothesis on day one of who they are. The next is channels. How does your product over here get to your customers over here? And we use distribution channels to do that. Now, what's really interesting is pre-1990s, the only channels to get to a customer was a physical channel. That is, you went to a store, you had salespeople, there was physical distribution. But since the mid-1990s, in the last couple of decades, we now have virtual channels, the web, mobile, cloud. And so distribution channels, the first question you want to ask is, how will I be selling and how will I be distributing my products? So through physical channels, or are they web mobile? Or given today, almost every physical channel also has a web presence. What is the relationship of how your product gets from your company to the customers? Customer relationships is kind of the fourth piece. And customer relationships has a really interesting interaction with these other three pieces. It basically says, how do I get customers? How do I keep them? And how do I grow them? And just like thinking about distribution channels, these are very different for web mobile than they are for physical channels. But visually, they kind of look like this double-sided funnel. So let's just take a look at quickly a web example. In getting customers, you're going to be worrying about how do I acquire them? That is, how do I get them even to my website? How do I activate them? That is, how do I make them do something? And then later on, we'll see after I got them, how do I keep them around? That is, how do I not lose them through attrition and churn? And then what can I do once I have customers to make them spend more money or use my product even more? And so one of the things we'll be thinking about is, how do I get, keep, and grow customers? And just like every other step, you might have hypotheses on day one, but you're only going to figure this out when you're out of the building. The next thing is revenue streams. How do you actually make money from your product and service being sold to customer segments? You know, revenue streams basically ask the question, what value is the customer paying for? And it actually has you think about, what's the strategy of how I'm going to capture that value? Is it I'm going to just have a direct sale and it's a transaction based on price? Is it a freemium model where I'm going to give away the product for free and hope that some portion convert later? Is it a license or subscription model? That revenue model is different than the pricing tactics. That is, what is the dollar or pound amount or euro amount that I'm going to be charging? Again, the only way to figure this out is being able to interact with tens or hundreds or thousands of customers so you finally understand what the right revenue stream and revenue model is. Next piece you want to think about is, what are the key resources? What do you need to make the business model work? What assets are important? And what's an example of an asset in a key resource? Well, finance. Do you need capital? need a line of credit. Some assets and resources are physical. Do you need physical plant, like a manufacturing line? Do you need specialized machines? Do you need vans and for delivery? Do you need cars? Is there something else you need? Is there intellectual property you need? Is there patents you need to acquire or protect? Do you need to acquire customer lists? Or is it just that you need to get great people, great software programmers in a specific area, or great hardware designers, or great manufacturing people? And then finally, again, the interaction between intellectual and human capital is that's another key resource. What specifically do you need to do to keep these people, and who are they? The next piece is, who are your key partners and suppliers? And partnerships are kind of interesting, is we need to ask ourselves, before what's the deal, is what exactly are we acquiring from partners? And also, what activities are they going to perform and when? And this is where startups sometimes make a mistake of thinking, well, large companies do partnerships. I guess I need those too on day one. Turns out the types of partnerships you need in year one are certainly not the ones you're going to need in year 3 or 5 or 10. And the types of partnerships could be strategic alliances, joint ventures, just regular suppliers and buyers. And so you need to be thinking through who they are, actually getting out of the building and testing them. Next are key activities. What's the most important things you need to do for the business to make the business model work? Are you in the production business? Are you making something? Or are you in the problem-solving business, like you're doing consulting or engineering? Or are you managing supply chains? What are the key activities you need to become expert at? And then finally, all this adds up on the left-hand side over here to cost. What are the costs and expenses to operate the business model? One of the interesting things about cost is it's not just the obvious ones, like people or buildings or materials. What you're really going to be asking are, what are the entire costs to operate our business model? And so you want to think about what are the most important costs to worry about? What are the most expensive resources you're going to need to pay for? And what key activities are the most expensive? And then you want to ask the typical accounting things, what are fixed costs? What are variable costs? Are there economies of scale? And you want to start getting a good handle on what it is that will end up costing you money to run your business.
Great. I hope this video was clear for everyone.
The Business Model Canvas for Startups. The Business Model Canvas is a strategic management and entrepreneurial tool for developing new and documenting existing business models.
I guess the next video is
That
started.
allows you to
Yeah, I'll just
describe,
end that first.
design, invent, and improve your business model. For every great idea, there needs to be a great.
Great. So getting back to the presentation. Was the model clear to everyone in terms of, did you all, any comments in terms of what you all got from the model? We'd love to get, few people to feedback. Any students out there who'd love to share in terms of, what they thought about the model?
Anyone wants to share their feedback, they can maybe unmute themselves or post their comments in the chat window, whatever you're comfortable with. I think, Siddharth, let's move on. We don't have any comments at this time.
Great. So, so far what we've done is we've gone through the 9 different building blocks of a business model canvas. And, the key element to really start off with is your customer segment. So for anyone who's, setting up their business, the first thing for us to understand is, which are the customers and the users that we are serving. What is the kind of work that you really want to get done for a customer, and you need to kind of, think through that. So if it's a product based business, what is the age group of the customer that you're looking at? What is the demographics? Where does this customer stay? What is his consumption pattern? What is the kind of price that he'll pay for a product? So these are some of the important elements to really segment and understand when you're looking at starting a business in terms of who your key customer really is, who's looking at buying your business or your product or your service. Then moving forward, what is the value proposition of your business? Now, value proposition is very key aspect which most people when they're running a business very transactionally tend to miss out. But the value proposition really highlights what are you offering the customer in terms of what is it that they really get that they want to look at buying your product for. So for example, if you're selling, let's say you're in the fashion business, you will be selling your product, maybe a garment, but the value really is an experience of buying, let's say, a designer outfit or buying really a brand, or if you're in the business of, let's say, setting some sort of a service, so let's say Swiggy. Swiggy is one of the best apps that one would use for ordering food. But the value proposition that the customer really gets over there is you're getting your food under, let's say, 30 minutes or 40 minutes in terms of ordering it. You're getting food which is from different so that really is a value proposition for a customer, and this is something that entrepreneurs need to think through, that what is the customer getting as a value proposition when they are offering a specific product or a service. Channels of distribution. So when you are looking at starting a business, what are the channels that you're going to use in terms of? So initially, at least till 20 years back, retail was one of the main channels for selling. You had brick and mortar stores, you had office spaces. Today a lot of things have gone online. Everything is digital. Are you going to be looking at partnering with some sort of online store? Are you going to be looking at creating your own online platform? What is the channel with which you're going to sell your products? Customer relationships. So what is the kind of relationship you're going to create with your customer? Is your product going to be automated? Are you going to be looking at some sort of a personalized service where there is a direct person who's going to be selling to your customer? Are you going to create a product which is only for a one-time purchase, or is it going to be something where you're looking at retaining the customer and working on a model-based model where they purchase products from you on a regular, repeated basis? So also take into consideration what is the relationship that you are establishing with your customer is quite critical. That is very essential when you're laying down your marketing strategy and the way you want to project your product to your consumers. Revenue streams. Trying to understand what are the customers really willing to pay for. How are you looking at generating revenues for your customer? Is it going to be transactional? Is it going to be a one-time purchase? Is it going to be one-time purchase in a year? Is it going to be one-time purchase for a long period of time? Are you doing recurring revenues? As an example, like a Netflix would be a regular subscription-based business model. A bridal outfit, for that matter, would be a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. Or you may have an annual maintenance contract, for your computer or for certain services that you take in your office, which are revenue streams, which will be recurring on a yearly basis. Trying to figure out how you want to kind of streamline and make it structure that out from your business. The key resources. So key resources really are quite critical, because key resources add to your costs. In terms of building a specific business, your key resources are the essential elements or your cost factors that you need to take into consideration in terms of starting your business to figure out what is it that you need to really invest in the beginning. So it could be your manpower, it could be your technology solution, it could be your office space, it could be certain vendors you've tied up with externally, it could be raw materials. So essentially, what are those resources that you need to take into consideration while planning your entire business? Key activities. So what is the kind of work that needs to be done on a regular basis, or what are the kind of activities that need to be planned on a regular basis to make your business function? So is it logistics? Are there regular deliveries happening? Are you selling regularly? In terms of if it's an online channel, regular updation of products. If it's some sort of a service, are you reaching out to the customer regularly in terms of marketing? So what is it that you need to do on a regular basis is what makes up your activities, and which is crucial for you to make a note of. key partners. Are you looking at, so this is crucial because, when somebody's planning a business, you're not going to invest or put money into everything. So you also need to understand what are some of those key essential partnerships that you would, take into consideration or form in terms of alliances. So as an example, let's say if it's an e-commerce business, right? So in e-commerce business, you may invest in your technology, you may invest in the entire backend, you may invest in the marketing, but you may not necessarily invest in the products. You may form partnerships with people to provide products for you to sell online. You'll form a partnership with a logistics partner. You'll form a partnership with let's say a payment gateway. You'll form a partnership with an external marketing company. So these are some of the elements that you need to take a note on in terms of your marketing and your or your entire business model, in terms of what are the key partnerships and alliances that you would form in terms of creating a business model. Cost structures. So we've already covered resources and we already covered some of the activities. So laying down what is a cost element, or what are some of the cost structures that you need to take into consideration. So what are the key elements that drive your cost? Is it your manpower? Is it your logistics, your technology, maintenance bills? So making a total consideration of that. And finally, once you take all these things into consideration, this is what the output is. This is essentially the business model canvas, which I recommend that for any young entrepreneur to make a note of these factors and jot these pointers down. So for example, and if you look at this, all the elements on the left side, which is your key partners, key activities, key resources, add to the entire cost of your business. And your customer relationships, your channels of distribution, your customer segments, these are essentially your revenue streams. And finally, what's very core to the business to map out is your value proposition in terms of what is a customer really getting out of a business. So as an example, let's take an example today of Skype. So Skype essentially is a company that we have been all of us are aware of. We've all used at different points in time, and I felt this is an example that we could take into consideration while creating a business model canvas, more in terms of getting some sort of a practical insight or understanding in terms of how Skype went around the BMC, or what is the Skype of the what is the business model canvas of Skype. So for example, the customer segment that Skype really focuses on is on the web users globally, and essentially people who want to make who want to call on specific phones, or who are looking at specific meetings on a regular basis. So that is how they define the customer segment. Then they went about in their relationships. So Skype really has mass customization in terms of relationship, because for every person who's using a Skype platform, you can create your own account. It is sort of personalized, and then you're interacting also several different people using that one account, which is sort of customized to you. In terms of channels, you have Skype.com, which is their main channel partnership, or it's largely the online platform, and that's the only way they really sell their product. In terms of key partners, so Skype has partnered with payment providers. So every time you create a Skype professional account, you have an online payment partner that you would they've tied up with where the payments come in. Secondly, Skype also has individual partnerships with different telcos and B2B partners who Skype has a Skype premium account with, wherein they could have professional services focused only on those B2B partners. So you have a B2C aspect of Skype, which is customers like us. At the same time, you also have a B2B, a Skype for business aspect, where they are focusing more on businesses which are functioning more as a business and want to interact with office meetings on other places. The key activity for Skype really is software development. And the reason that is one of the key activities is because Skype is constantly upgrading its services, and they have a very strong team which is focused on the entire software development, because to make it more relevant today vis-a-vis competition, for example, the kind of work that Zoom is doing, the kind of platform that we are using. So automatically your key resources largely are your software developers. So hence we see that when it comes to Skype, your entire revenue channel comes from, prepaid or subscription business, which is your revenue streams. At the same time, your cost structure largely is your software development team as well as your complaint management team. So their main investment really is their personal or software developers plus the entire team which is managing any issues that people are facing backend. So this is, and this is not to say that these are the only aspects that go in, but this is really highlighting what are some of the key aspects or elements taken into consideration while creating the business model for Skype. As another example, which
maybe Siddharth, like walking through the next example, we can also ask participants to start creating their business models along with it. So what do you think? Should we?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think what I was thinking is, we will just finish just one more example, and I will show them the entire business model canvas screen and give them around 5 minutes to start jotting their points, and then we can get into a discussion. How does that sound?
Sure. That works, yeah.
So let's do that. And is it audible, or are we going too fast? Does this work for everyone, Upasna?
I think let's get some feedback from the audience. Guys, you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Any
Share
quick
chat window, anything you want clarity on. And I think, like Siddharth said, we'll spend 5 minutes after this where we'll help you create this business plan for you on this sheet, saying for your business, what are the customer segments, what are the key partners, so that it sets out clearly. And the idea is saying, when you're building out a business plan, rather than starting with 1,000 or 100-page document, this is like the easiest layout of what you have in your mind. It is very easy to visualize it in this format. So I think any questions, please feel free to ask. Maybe then Siddharth will cover this one more example.
Let's do that. So, Gillette, it's a brand which, everyone's aware of. Most of us use it regularly. So essentially, when you look at Gillette as a razor, they focus more on.
There was some disturbance. Is somebody trying to say something? If you're not talking, please go on mute. Yeah, Siddharth, I guess it's better.
Great. Great. So Gillette as a brand is, one of the most regular brands that, we have been using and, most of us are aware of. And in terms of, sharing, their business model canvas, so the customers largely are a large pool of customers, it's essentially mass consumers, men essentially who use this on a very regular basis. So that is really their key customer segment. They haven't kept any specific age group in mind, but for them, the age group really goes across the entire category. Secondly, in terms of relationships, they've tried to create relationships with consumers, wherein they are saying that, this is a brand that you could use, for a lifetime. So that's the kind of relationship that consumers want to use using a Gillette. In terms of their channels, you'll find it in retail or you'll find it, online, but they've essentially used both online and offline channels, for increasing the sales. Plus, they're also doing a lot of different, corporate partnerships. Now, in terms of, if you look at the business model canvas again, for them, their key partners are the manufacturers. So Gillette focuses a lot on their entire design of the product, but they are but they don't own their retail. They partnered with different manufacturers, they partner with different retailers, and that's how they really have created their partnerships. Their key activities, marketing, R&D, logistics, and the key resources are essentially, the key resource is their brand and their patent and the value proposition. So essentially, if you look at Gillette as a brand, so most of the money of Gillette comes through not really by selling that individual device or their razor, but a lot of their money comes largely through the blades. So that's where they end up, making a lot of their money really from, and that's where they charge the profit. And the reason it's a value proposition for them really is because the amount of R&D research which is gone in creating these blades. At the same time, the other aspect also in terms of value proposition is their design. So Gillette claims that when it comes to their razor handles, these are essentially very well designed. So if you look at the cost structure, is their marketing and logistics, their manufacturing R&D, and if you look at the revenue stream, it's basically their one-time purchase of their the device, and finally frequent blade replacements. So they make most of their money through the blades. Great. So you're setting a small screen for you all in terms of creating a business model canvas. I would love all of you all to spend 5 minutes for your business, and you may not be able to cover all, but try and see some of the key aspects which are important for you all. So let's try and see if we can create our own business model canvas given the structure that's over here. Let's do it.
So guys, any questions you have at this point in time, please feel free to ask.
Any students out there who worked on their business models, their business plans? Any queries, any questions?
I think Sheetal, Rupali, you guys have pre-filled it. So anything you want to share your experience of when you created it? Did it give you any clarity? What are your thoughts? Radhika, if you're there.
Also, I think one of the students, Sunil, had filled it up. Then Anjali, you had filled up. If anything you all want to talk about.
Yeah, Anjali, maybe Sunil, Anjali, you want to walk us through your canvas, what you have created, what are your thoughts?
I want to understand from either Sunil or Anjali, what is their business around, and also get their thoughts in terms of, what are some of their, customer segments, what are the channels that they're looking at setting their business, for, some of the resources or, anything from their side.
Sure. Hi, this is Anjali here.
Hi, Anjali.
Yeah, hi, Anjali.
So the plan that we are actually working on, and in fact, it's live also right now, is something called thinkequal.com. It's THIINK. Equal.com. So what we're trying to do is look at, so we've been working a lot in the space of diversity and inclusion with companies for a while now. And what we realize that, however much we work on this, but the supply of women talent in the workforce is a challenge everywhere. Because there are, like a number of reasons why women drop off, or what career choices we make very early on in our careers, what kind of roles that we pick up, etc. So there's a very, very large conversation. And of course, given this whole COVID situation, we've gone back 10%, that there's been a drop in the number of women already there. So they've either lost jobs, or they just said that, I can't manage this 3-shift thing that suddenly on us without domestic help or support at home, etc. Also, some numbers that 85% of the women who graduate in this country never work. So that's also a big segment of women, who we can try and mobilize and say that how do we work on financial independence and self-worth for them. So that's really the starting point with which we started this whole endeavor. And so we've done some work with, corporates and said, let's do second career programs where we get back these women, or how do we build more inclusive workspaces so that companies, it's a little bit easier for women to survive and thrive in those organizations. So a lot of our work was offline, and about a year ago is when we thought of this idea, where we said that let's become the virtual career accelerator for women, which means that we now do nudges. These are small, if you can imagine, like the size of your mobile screen, those kind of bite-sized learning which comes to them every week, depending on which stream they are in. So if you're a woman in finance, if you're a woman in tech, if you're a woman in legal, for example, so what are the customized things that you need to know? so that you will stay the course. Also, the power of the tribe, like we say that, for women, a lot of the communities around, how can I look at increasing knowledge, or which are the skills, what should I do, look at upskilling or reskilling for, where should I look at these courses, because LinkedIn etc is now very very generic. So how
Yeah.
can we give focused attention to women and their careers? That's one part. The other is also a little bit about the conversation for men beyond work, because it's while we stereotype women and a lot of biases we have against women in the workspace, we also have a lot of biases on the other side for men. So there is no place where they can also go and talk about and say, I what can I do to be an equal dad, or how do I look at parenting, or how do I look at work life balance even for a man. So right now these conversations are still not very out there, and we just expect the men to be our primary breadwinners. So, and also the pressure that it creates on them. So how do we deal with this whole conversation outside of work? And of course the third is the whole talking to corporates to say how can we also look at bite-sized like surveys, or also offerings for corporate, so that inclusion then becomes a fabric of the organization and not just like a good to do thing and say, oh, I have a 30% women number and I think we are more inclusive and we should look at. So look at also in what do I say, look at a more wider landscape than only gender for inclusion in corporates. So that's a
Got it.
little bit background of what we do. So of course there is a whole plan again
So my
around.
key question to you is, when you're looking at, planning a business model, what is the,
Yeah.
age group of women that you're looking at?
So this will be upwards of 18 to 40, 45. 18 to 45 is really the audience that we're looking at. Why I
Got it.
say 18? Because I think the choices that happen at campuses,
Yeah.
or when I'm choosing which stream I need to go into, that's really the decider for for how long you will stay in the workforce.
Got it. And essentially, what is, so the women that you're looking at, helping or looking at including, are these, like you said, campuses, are they young, from an education level perspective, are they all college pass outs, or are they, is there a specific?
Yeah, they're all qualified, at least a minimum of a graduate. But also, if there are professional qualifications, that obviously adds to the business case. But otherwise, at least a minimum of a graduate.
Got it. And from a channel perspective, how do you intend to do this in terms of providing, helping these women get jobs? Are you looking at, creating a network wherein there are,
Yes.
consultants outside who are going to speak to corporates and create these networks, or is it going to be an online platform?
No. So there are a lot of things. So there are 2-3 things. One is, of course, the contingent hiring, which typically clients say that, I have a role, go get me a woman for this role. So that is like how you go back into your databases and look for these women. The other is look at very, very specific hiring drives. For example, if I say that, I want to hire women in STEM, then I go and look at these specifically these areas. So right now also, like in November, we're planning a job fair, which is for only women in STEM. So we are going to all our companies and saying, please be there. We'll get you 25,000 women to interview. You please take a booth and be there to hire. So also it gives them a chance to, showcase their employer brand, to say why us over the 15 others.
Got it. So the other question for you is that in terms of relationship with, let's say, a lot of these corporates,
Yes.
do you intend that, these corporates to hire, from a monthly basis, on a yearly basis?
So they already have these hiring requirements that they, like you typically have at the beginning of the year, you've planned that I'm going to have 10 positions or 15 positions or 35 positions, whatever. So how do we look at, saying that out of those 30, can you commit some to hiring women? The other thing, what we're also looking to do is build up an academy. Like I told you about Second Careers, what we're trying to do is like a back to the front academy, where we say that how companies look at campuses, right? We already know that 5% or 7% of my pool of the beginner, at my junior levels will come from campuses, and year on year that I can go to a campus and hire 10 people. So we are saying that look at a returnee pool like that. We are creating a virtual academy where we say for 3 months, we will talk to them about mind maps and getting the whole transition piece. Because
that sounds excellent. The only question I have for you is, while, you are looking at creating an entire inclusive business model, from and the idea really is to help women and get them into the workforce.
Yes.
What is it from a corporate side who's hiring these women, and while you are making all these efforts in terms of training them and skilling them, but what is your key value proposition? If you had to kind of put it in one line for your business, what is the key value proposition that your the effort that you're making is going to give the corporates who are looking at hiring these women?
So for the because see,
It's very clear from the business side. I'm asking you from a corporate and from a business side.
Corporate side is of course the whole inclusion agenda, right? Because there are so many companies who have picked it up seriously now. So there is a whole push because they're running second career programs. They're running a lot of. They're keen to hire, but they're coming back and telling us where are the women.
Got it.
So that's the supply is really what we are trying to look at, and that's what I think we've been really passionate about solving for, that the supply of women talent.
Got it. So one is definitely you are looking at the agenda that corporates have in terms of fulfilling the inclusion theme and their
Yes.
CSR agenda. At the same time, also is there something that you're doing? For example, are you making them skill ready? Are you teaching them certain differentiated skills that a corporate may require, which are more relevant to today? Is there some kind of are you working with corporates to understand that they're looking at hiring, let's say, people who are skilled at a specific new skill set? Are you also making an effort to understand that, because that really is your position?
Yes. So in fact, all of our past experience, and I come with now about 20 years of experience in the human resources space. So that's a key part of what we've been doing. In fact, I spent 10 years of that 20 with corporates. And the last 10 I've been working. So we started out as a hiring company, then we got into the whole diversity thing. Then we're doing a lot of training, engagement stuff also. So that's why I think we understand that space pretty well, that, where are they coming from? What are they looking for?
Excellent. And in terms of, key activities for you as a business, when you're looking at setting this entire business up, you did, highlight some of the things, but I also feel that you spoke, of 2-3 different revenue models.
Yes.
But what is the key activities that you need to do? One is, you said, skilling. What are the other activities? Is it, building relationships?
Creating a community where women, so for example, specific areas like women in sales, women in tech. So create these specific buckets so that the conversation is deeper and there is an opportunity for upskilling and reskilling within these communities. That's one. Second is, of course, the recruiting. The recruiting piece is another business model. And the third piece is, looking at women across different career stages. So one is on the, if you draw like an X and a Y axis, there is the functional areas, which is tech, legal or sales, etc. on one side. And the other is career stages. So, campus, early career, mid-career, returning to career, and then senior leaders, senior women, right? Because their asks across career stages are also very, very different.
Got it. And what about creating partnerships with corporates? How are you going about that? In terms of,
like I said, that's our background and that's where we come from, right? Because these relationships are already there. In fact, we're already working in the offline space with a lot of companies. And also when we go back to them with specific interventions like the job fair or like an academy, these give us opportunities to have a lot of starter conversations with a completely new lineup of clients. Because these are some things that they seem interested in, saying that it's one day if I come to a job fair, but then that starts off a much deeper conversation with all of them.
Got it. So definitely there are certain teams that you built in house, but also in terms of building your entire business model, or in terms of working with a lot of external partners. What are some of the key partners that you've created for your business?
So see, we are, so of course the tech is a critical one, right? Because given the way we are today, a platform or a conversation where all these conversations can happen parallelly and size and scale can happen is going to be largely based on tech. So some of the integrations that we are doing there, like this job fair, which we're now going to do virtual, or we already started our whole virtual journey last year when we did a couple of online summits, etc., which were at that time people said, it's way too early for the market, and do you think virtual will work? And who are we to know that in 6 months everything has changed? So that of course is one key area where I think we need to strengthen it up. So like for example, we are talking to people where we can, instead of building capabilities in-house, how do you do video interviews on your platform, or how do you do the select cohort meets or networking meets within the platform. So those are one side, those are key relationships. The other is talking to a lot of communities of women. So for example, we are tying up with women communities across the country on various things, like women who tech, women who code, women in testing, IEEE, lots of mommy groups, etc. So that's a very, very key relationship process also, because we need to migrate the professionally inclined women to our platform.
Got it. I think this sounds excellent. I think we're also approaching, closer to the end of time, but Upasana, maybe one more example of, some other entrepreneur also.
Yeah,
because
sure. So I think this was very good. And I think what we saw, I'll just, basically Anjali was talking about the entire business model, and Siddharth was trying to say how it fits in each box and gives you clarity. So say what all we spoke about, if we have everything in one sheet to visualize, it gives so much clarity to your team, to your investors, to your clients, to know, what you are actually doing. So this was actually a very beautiful conversation and example. So if anybody else also wants to share, I think anyways, we are running short of time. So we have 3-4 minutes more. But I think any more questions at this point in time, anything you're not clear on, like how do you identify your value proposition? So I think value proposition, like Anjali said, like they're working for women, they're also working for men going forward. And, I think, so this is one canvas which can keep evolving as your business needs are evolving. And channels also, like they were focused on the physical channels, and now the digital channels are picking up. So I think this is one piece which will help you clearly think, okay, how the business is evolving, what are the iterations you need to do, what are the things that are changing for you. So I think,
also, Upasana, that's very interesting because, in Anjali's case, the value proposition is two-pronged. So one is a value proposition which, she's providing to a lot of, women in terms of getting them, jobs, in terms of, providing them employment opportunities and increasing their household incomes. At the same time, then there is a value proposition also to the corporate side, where she's taking care of their, inclusion agenda. She's taking care of their CSR needs. At the same time, she's also working with, different, they're looking at, skilling them to specific requirements. So, that is something which is, quite beautiful and quite interesting.
Correct. Thank you, Anjali, for this.
Thanks for the opportunity to share this. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Great. Is there any other
Darshana?
example? Yeah. Anyone else? Or?
Yeah, any other questions? Example, I don't think so that we'll have time now. So I think any questions, if anybody has any specific questions, we may take it now. Otherwise, I think I hand it over to you, Archana, for vote of thanks.
Can I ask one question?
Yes,
Sure, Sangeeta.
Let me just jump in. When and how do you evaluate your business model, or do you re-evaluate your business model? And is that a possibility? And at what point would you want to do it?
So to be honest with you, given the scenario that we are in, people do evaluate their business models, on a regular basis. But it's definitely, so there was a point in time where, people would look at it, let's say once in a year, based on certain, analysis that we've understood as a consulting firm, and we've looked at, some of the organizations that we've captured. But, today, on a 6 monthly basis, a lot of elements in the business model are reevaluated. It doesn't mean there's a lot of change to it, but definitely, in terms of, trying to understand it from a startup perspective, is your customer segment that you're targeting right? Is there, is the cost of service that you're providing accurate? Do you need to get into some sort of, discounting mechanisms? So, what I would suggest is that at least, once in a 6-month basis, people need to look at their, models and try to see if there are certain, changes that can be made. Now, these are not changes which is going to be in terms of changing entire overall business model, but trying to see if you're, meeting certain, revenue targets, if your, customer segments are happy. So, this is an activity which needs to be done on a sort of a regular basis, but not on an everyday basis, but at least once in a 6 months, this is something where you need to have a, meeting with your top management teams and try to figure out how to take it forward.
And I think just to add to Siddharth's point, so I think when COVID hit, it was a good time to, relook at your business model canvas. If you're adding more channels, like digital became the main channel for everyone. If your value proposition is changing, like auto manufacturers started moving to ventilators. So if you're doing something, fintechs changed their business model drastically to serve the people who were hit hard. So I think these were the times when you actually revisit your canvas and see, what has changed and what needs to be done.
Great. I think if there aren't any more questions, then this has been quite interesting.
Yeah.
It has been absolutely amazing, Siddharth. It's been a wonderful session. And I think, like Upasana rightly said, a lot of people were pivoting the business models during COVID times as well. And this session was very relevant, knowledgeable, and really helpful, because as we all know that, when we are running too fast, we forget that we have to direct our energy. We are too focused on building an awesome product. But what's also important is that the business model canvas is something which forces you to think beyond your product as well. And when you envision how you will sell your product, what type of resources you will need, as well as the different customer segments you can serve, the business becomes very lucid. And I think documenting it, like the example we had when you were speaking to Anjali, it just perfectly fit in all the questions which were laid out there. So I think documenting it always gives you the clarity when you talk to your customers. It also helps in terms of an investor pitch going forward as well. So thank you so much, Siddharth, for helping our entrepreneur participants to understand how to prepare or think through a business model canvas. And thank you, Upasana, for structuring the discussion in the absolute accurate way. Thank you, the entire FICCI Flow team, our student partners, Million Minds and IIT Bombay. It's been an absolute pleasure. We would love to have you all for our next session, which is on the 10th of October. And thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.